Welcome. This is another installment of Pages Promotions, and we are doing a fun little show called Indie Reads TV, where we get to talk to independent authors and other fun people of the independent book world. Today, we have Brenda Hasse joining us today. She's written a lot of different books in a lot of different genres, and we will be talking to her about those, about her career, and about where you can meet her at upcoming festivals and other events. So, Brenda, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. Let's talk first about how you got started in writing. I understand that when you were a young person, writing and reading were not your favorite things.
No, I went to a Catholic school, and it didn't take me long to realize the way that the classrooms were set up. They had 6 rows with 5 desks in each row, and the more proficient readers were put in the first 2 rows next to the door. Then middle of the road were put in the second 2, and then the last 2 rows were the slowest readers. I was always in the slowest readers rows. In fact, I would say I was probably the bottom 5 in my class.
Okay.
It was just something difficult for me to do. I mean, with math, I'm a whiz. I still am that way. But with writing, it was always something tough for me to do. I don't know if I just couldn't focus or what the issue was. And I had to be pulled out of the classroom several times a week with a group of, a handful of other kids, and we worked with paraprofessionals to try and improve my reading skills.
So, given that as your early foray into the written word, how did you now become an author of tons of books? How did you make that transition?
Well, I like to think that when I wasn't reading books, like when other people were involved with books, I didn't want to have anything to do with books. I would rather do crafty things, or at times, I guess my imagination grew to the point where I entertained myself by telling myself stories instead and making things up. So I think I've just kind of taken that part of my life and transitioned it to actual books.
Okay, so as you go through life, reading as a child didn't really appeal to you. You're doing more math stuff, moving into adulthood, years pass, and you find yourself writing this little sweet book for children called A Unicorn for My Birthday. How did that come about? And did that come out of this struggle you had with reading as a child, or was that ancillary? Were the two issues separate?
I think it was separate. I had first published Wilkinshire, which is a multi-award winning book. It's a preteen novel about a dragon that cries diamond tears. It was something that kind of struck me one day. I was doing a long-term subbing position in social studies, and one of my students was having a difficult time pronouncing the capital of Colombia, which is Bogota. And I thought, Bogota, wow, that's really a neat name. And my daughter came home that same week with an assignment where she had to read about Western dragons versus Eastern dragons. And for some reason, it just popped in my head. I would love to write a book about a dragon that cries diamond tears and name him Bogota. So that's how I came up with that novel. But once I had it published, then this gentleman, Ed Kane, lived in Virginia, and he contacted me one day and he said, I make rocking horses, and I'd like you to produce books for me to sell with my rocking horses. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I found my illustrator. Actually, Ed found my illustrator, who lives in Virginia. Her name's Allison Hatter, and she is a stay-at-home mom with 3 boys, and she homeschools them.
Okay.
But she's got a degree in graphic arts and illustrations. So I started working with Allison, and I did 2 picture books prior to doing this book here. And I came up with the idea of why not make a rocking horse a unicorn, and Ed thought that was a good idea, so then I wrote a book for that in 2009. So that's how that book came about.
About how long did it take you to actually finish the book from start to finish, concept to, hey, I have a book in my hand?
Well, my job was quite easy to do. It was the illustration. Some of the illustrations are very intricate and involved, and Allison did a great job. And at the time, I think she had 1 baby and another baby on the way.
Wow.
So a lot, I know. So she was from midnight to 3 in the morning, a lot of times working on the illustrations. And So it took, I probably her longer than me. I think the whole mess probably came together like in 6 months, maybe less. You know, it was one of those, all right, we have to get this done before the baby gets here.
Sure,
So
yeah.
it was one of those deals.
That's wonderful. So the most recent book that you've written is Beyond the Grave.
Yes, that just came out last week. It's a sequel.
And this is the sequel to another book you have called On the Third Day, correct?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about On the Third Day, and then don't give away too much because we want to go out and read it. But then tell us how it segues into Beyond the Grave.
Okay, On the Third Day is a story about a woman who ends up developing cancer. And during my research, what I discovered is if you have a high dose of chemo and a high dose of antibiotics, you can actually lose your hearing. So I set it up to where this fictional character loses her hearing during her illness and then has a difficult time communicating with people.
Okay.
So when she passes away, she meets her spirit guide or guardian angel. And she's very angry and frustrated that she didn't get to say goodbye. And I think it's kind of a reversal from what many of us experience when we lose somebody.
Sure.
So I have it set up to where the guardian angel tells her you can say goodbye through dreams, which I'm just one of those persons that has all these weird things happen to me.
Okay.
And I experience a lot of visions and dreams from people who pass on, or sometimes I can see something in the future. Like my daughter and daughter-in-laws can't ever fool me because I always know when they're expecting a baby and what they're going to have.
Well, that's fortunate. You can shop ahead.
I can. So basically what the story is about is how this fictional character, Marie Michaels, can instill the dreams that I've experienced in her fictional loved ones to say goodbye.
Okay. And then how does that transition into Beyond the Grave?
Beyond the Grave is one of the things she does before she crosses over is she leaves a white feather on her desk. And the book continues on to where she can communicate with her daughter, and she leaves white feathers whenever she's near her. So that's why there's a white feather on the cover.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
That I love the idea that you can take something so sentimental like that, a nice little thing that maybe most people won't recognize as significant.
Right.
And you work it into the story and make it a significant piece of the story.
I mean, many people know that sometimes, you can find a coin or something else that maybe a loved one might have left you. But I just chose feathers because I find feathers all the time.
Okay. So tell us then about Lady's Destiny.
Lady's Destiny is one of my historical romances. It's a young adult book. I also have The Freelancer, which I didn't give you a picture of, but I have 2 young adult historical romances. And it's about a young lady that it kind of starts off with, like Cinderella, where she's kind of in a situation where her dad married someone who's very domineering, stepmother that treats her quite poorly. And she just finally says, I've had enough. And she runs away and is discovered by this young lord. And his kingdom was ruined while he was away with his knight. And he assumes that she's just a peasant that survived the attack. And he kind of takes her in. And, they kind of fall in love and that type of thing.
So it does definitely follow into that fairy tale trope kind of thing.
Well, there's a little bit of a twist in the storyline there, too. Things catch up with her, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not what you think it is, so.
Excellent. Those are the best books.
Yes.
The books that have a little something that we're not really sure.
Right.
And you kind of have to go back and read a couple more pages to find out why it is you missed it the first time around.
Right,
Those are the best books.
Definitely. Yeah, this one keeps you guessing a little bit.
So you write in multiple genres.
Yes, I do.
So what inspired you to branch out? I know so many authors who say, I'm only going to write one genre. It's what I'm most comfortable with. I know I can write this and do it well. Personally, I write in multiple genres because I figure you have to try them all before you can pick a favorite.
Right.
But that's not everybody's take on the problem.
Right.
How did you decide to write multiple genres, and then why the ones you chose, as opposed to, say, Western or science fiction?
Well, I love history. I've always loved to study history, and I find as I've aged over time, probably when I was in my early 20s and 30s, I was really in love with the Victorian time period. But as I got older, I like the medieval time period better.
Okay.
Some believe it's from a past life, who knows? But I really like the Victorian time period. As far as On the Third Day, I felt like I was almost like pushed to write that book. Like it was a message that other people need to hear. Like,
Okay.
you know, when we die, we don't really die. Type
So
of thing.
then, if On the Third Day kind of felt like a calling to write, did Beyond the Grave kind of follow that same thing, or did you just have more story to tell, and that's why you wrote the next book?
Well, the funny thing with that is somebody asked me, do you ever write a series? I'm like, no, I don't write a series. Well, On the Third Day was part of my Nano novel.
Okay.
And I had written everything I could, and I hadn't reached my 50,000 words. So I'm like, okay, I got to kind of keep going here. So I just thought, oh, this naturally turns right into a series. So I kept writing the second one, and then I have a third one already outlined.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you about the third book coming up.
Yeah.
I understand. I have here written in my notes that it's called Until We Meet Again.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a little bit of what this book is going to be about without giving away too much?
It's about how Marie Michael's daughter, who is Elizabeth, ends up getting married to her college sweetheart, and about how I hate to say too much of it, about things that happen to where she sees visions like of parents and stuff like that along the way, and at the end there's an interesting twist that I've tended to notice of things that happen in my life too.
Okay, great. If people want to find you in your books, we have your website crawling underneath your picture right now, so
Okay.
that people can go to Brenda Hasse Books and find you. I'm curious. I know that you teach or work with young children as a parapro, is it?
No, I'm actually a guest teacher at my area public schools, and I've started off in elementary school and worked my way up to the high school level. So,
Okay.
and I'm in every single class. I just got done the past 3 days working in special education classes at high school, which was interesting because we had to make cakes and frost them and no-bake cookies. And so you're trying to direct them, and, you know, it's not good when you add a quarter cup of pure vanilla compared to a quarter teaspoon of vanilla.
That is a big
That
difference.
does not turn out well. So we had a few mishaps, but it's fun working with the kids. They're really nice.
So, can you speak a little bit about how you feel the literacy situation is now with children? You see these kids every day. Are you seeing kids reading more? Are you seeing them reading less? And what do you think needs to be done to inspire children to become readers and writers throughout their lifetime?
Well, the one thing I've noticed when I grew up, it's kids are kind of like pigeonholed into the type of book that they're asked to read in school because the teacher has notes already done or questions already done. And sometimes I think it's almost easier if students can pick the books they want to read instead of just saying, okay, you have to read Boxcar Children. This is the book we're reading.
Right.
And I think sometimes, you know, not everyone likes to read Boxcar Children. As far as what I see at my school district, we really push reading a lot. Recently, our test scores have been above the state average in reading, writing, and in math. So we have like silent reading in class every day. We read the classics, and we really promote a lot of reading throughout the year.
Do you think that you see more reading and writing with kids? Or, I mean, I know that we're focusing on curriculum that says we have to teach more literacy, and I'm all for that.
Right.
But I also know that there's a huge influx of video games and television and Netflix and Hulu and all sorts of other influences. Do you think the kids are getting enough books?
I always think, you know, they can always find more time to read than what they are right now. One thing we do in the classroom is we make them put their cell phones up in these little pockets on the wall to where they don't have their cell phones during class time.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and they check them in. They each have a numbered pocket, And some teachers even take attendance that way. They just look at the pocket. If you forgot to put your cell phone up there, you're marked absent. So, that's one thing that we do that I think it gets the technology away from the kids. Our kids also have Chromebooks in each classroom in which they can use. And, when there's an assignment, they get the Chromebook out, not their phone type of thing. But
so it really is a new edition of pen and paper.
Yes, I think so.
Instead of, okay, pull out your notebook, now it's pull out your Chromebook.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
we don't have, when you and I were going to school, we didn't have the distraction of a cell phone in the classroom. So pulling out your notebook was, for some of us, a great joy.
Right.
But are you seeing kids that are gravitating to reading and writing, or are you seeing them just muddling through because it's part of the curriculum?
No, actually, I see a lot of students that like to read a lot. I mean, we access the Melcat at our school library, where they can, if we don't have the book, we can order it from any library, whether it's a university, a public library, and have it shipped to the school. So they're reading a lot. I mean, there are times, in fact, I was just in math class the other day, and a student was sitting there reading a book instead of doing her math. So
that's not necessarily a bad thing. I was that kid. When I was a kid, it was math that I shunned, and I was much more interested in looking at the words, and math didn't work for me, so I was that kid. I know that you attend a lot of events for authors, especially with Fenton Open Book. Can you tell me a little bit about Fenton Open Book, what they do, and your connection to them?
Well, my best friend owns it, Karen Pisantini. And Fenton's Open Book is an independent bookstore. It's small. It's only like 1,200 square feet. But we do all kinds of things, and we get the community involved in a lot of it. Recently, we had Independent Bookstore Day, and we decorated the whole store like Alice in Wonderland. And we gave out little prizes, and we had games to play, and there was all kinds of different Alice products that they could purchase. We had Adopt a Pet there, so that you could adopt puppies or kittens.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we do a lot of things like that for the community. I know coming up in July, there's Fenton's Art Walk, and she hosts 8 to 10 authors there for book signings at one time. And they just sit all on the sidewalk if it's not raining, and people can go up and visit and talk to the authors and ask them any questions. They can purchase their books, get an autographed copy. She just does a lot for the schools. Schools buy their books through her. She gives them a discount. Students get a 20% discount on books for classes. So,
for instance, their required reading courses, they could go there to get discounted books?
Absolutely, especially at the high school level, because they have like the AP classes, IB classes, and any book that's required for reading. That way they can mark it up and make notes in the margin or whatever they want to do, and they get a 20% discount on their purchase.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. She really caters a lot, and Karen is so nice. She also stocks a lot of independent authors. And she'll front face their book and put underneath it Michigan author, local author, things like that. And, she has a contract to sign, but she doesn't have a shelf stocking fee like some of the other stores do.
Right. So do you know when her next event is for local authors, so that if anybody watching today will be interested to go and check out some local authors?
I think the next one is going to be Fenton's Art Walk, which is, I think it's that Saturday, July 13th, I believe.
Okay.
Yep, and it's from 10 until 4. Is usually when the authors are there, even though the event goes till 8 o'clock at night. And they have artists in every of the downtown businesses, and there's events at the community center. So there's lots of stuff going on.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Since we're on the subject of events, you're going to be at Morse Elementary School May 11th. Can you talk a little bit about that event?
Well, truthfully, it's the first time I've ever done the event. I had someone contact me and ask me if I wanted to come. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a whirl. And so it'll be fun to visit with kids who like to read, interested in reading, and I'll just see how the event goes.
Excellent. So is it primarily for... is an event primarily for authors of children's books, or are you going to find a lot of different genres there? Do you know?
I have no idea. I think I'm assuming it's mostly for elementary students since it's at an elementary school.
Okay.
So I'm
Awesome.
planning on mainly focusing on a lot of my children's books and my preteen book.
Okay. And then also I see on your notes that you're going to be appearing with me and Donald Levin at an upcoming event in Rochester Heritage Days.
Yes.
Which is a fun event. There's lots of multimedia stuff going on. Civil War reenactors. There's a lot going on there, and that is May 18th and 19th, all day, both days.
Very cool. Yeah, I haven't done that one event either, so that'll be interesting to be involved in.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And then you will also be. I can't recall. Are you going to be going to the book festival, the summer book festival for Pages Promotions, June 22nd?
I am.
I
That's
thought
another
I
one.
saw your name on the list.
I know. I have quite a few of them booked, and I have to think back and look at my phone, at my calendar. I'm going to be there. I'm also going to be in Frankenmuth at Fenton's Open, or what's that one? Frankenmuth, the
In the
Once
Michigan
Upon a
Maid
Book.
Store? Oh, Once Upon a Book
Yep.
at Frankenmuth. That's a great show.
Yep. That one is the 19th and 20th of July. So it's just, I'm just trying to keep my dates straight at this point because there's so many.
No, I understand. I'm struggling with exactly the
Oh,
same
and Sterling
thing.
Fest. Did you get in Sterling Fest?
I am
Me too.
doing Sterling Fest. I'm very excited about that because
too.
that is so family friendly. There are so many people that come out from all walks of life with the art festival and then the carnival and then the library being so very supportive of Michigan authors
Cool.
to put us up. It's a fun day. You're going to have a great time there.
Yeah, so I have like 3 weekends in July already booked. I'm like, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I don't have a day off until I think the end of July. I think all my Saturdays are booked from now through the end of July. But such is the life of an author.
Yes, definitely. So,
Aside from Fenton Open Book, were you able to get your books into any local bookshops?
I think mine are at Heart of Michigan in Howell.
Okay.
I've had some in there. I've had them in some bookstores, but they've kind of gone away, unfortunately. But I really haven't tried that much to get any more into book in other bookstores. So I'm basically just going around doing signings and selling them online.
Okay. As a teacher and as an author, what would be the probably? I guess what I want to know is if I'm a 6th grade kid and I say, one day I want to be like you and I want to write, 8,000 books in 16 different genres, and how would you best mentor a young person to start on their writing journey?
First, I would tell them to read as much as they can, because what you're reading is what's already been published and what is accepted by publishers. And you can learn a lot just by reading other authors. I would also emphasize that they need to study sentence structure and use as many descriptive words as possible when they write their sentences. I go and do lectures at schools, and I talk about writing with description. And I give an example. I have like an activity we do. It's called Build a Sentence. And we start out with a very simple sentence like the cat ran. And then I pull kids up and they hold up these little, pieces of poster board. And the cat ran is done in black letters with white poster board. And then from there, the words that we add are in color. So you've got your adjective, your adverb, your prepositional phrase, your simile.
Okay.
I mean, to where they can see how you're expanding a very simple sentence into something much more complex but much more descriptive.
So it's essentially turning diagramming sentences into a graphic novel. You're adding
Basically.
colors instead
Yes.
of trying to create a flowchart.
Right. And like I tell the kids, when you read a book without pictures, you get a picture within your mind. And my job as a writer is I have the picture in my mind first. And I have to write it so well that whoever reads my words gets the same picture in their mind. I think they kind of connect with that, like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Right.
Yeah.
Painting with words. I had
Yeah.
an English teacher who said painting with words.
Right, definitely.
That's great if you're an artist.
Yeah. No,
But I live in the word world, so for me
Right.
it's about what can the author or what can the reader get out of the words as standalone articles rather than creating something else. that's the other thing I love about this industry is that each one of us approaches craft in such a different way.
Right.
So one last question, which is kind of bizarre, but I think it's an important thing to talk about. What would you say would be one or two important tips for the care and feeding of your favorite author or author in training?
Care and feeding of author and author in training. I don't know. I would say surround yourself with good people that can help you grow as a person as far as your writing career. I find that belonging to writing groups and getting positive feedback or negative feedback that help me grow as an author is very important as well. I don't mind hearing the bad stuff when I've created something because I know I can improve it at that point and make it better. And I know that's one thing they do at school is they have peer edits. Don't feel bad about yourself when you get somebody say, oh, no, this isn't any good, you need to redo this. I mean, yeah, it's their opinion, but maybe they have a point to make. So I would say take all points into consideration and see if you can improve what you've done already to make something better out of it.
Absolutely. All really great tips.
Thank you.
I wish that I had had that kind of support when I was younger. I had an engineer for a father, so it's a different mindset.
Yeah, a perfectionist, huh?
Yes, completely. And, again, math versus not math.
Right.
Big difference. So any last thoughts about your upcoming books, or is there a particular book by another indie author that you would highly recommend?
Oh, geez. You know what? I think supporting all indie authors are important. We're all struggling artists, and we work really hard at our craft. Sometimes you're spending years to even write one book. So take a chance, buy an indie author book, see if you like it, put a review out there for, them. We always like reviews.
Sure, yeah.
And the feedback. Probably one of the things I like to do more than anything when I lecture at a school is I will read an excerpt from my book, and it's that magical moment when you've just captivated your audience, because when I start reading it, they're kind of squirming and whispering and stuff, but then all of a sudden it's quiet and no one's moving, and you're like, oh,
yeah, that moment is really cool.
It is the best moment ever.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful evening.
You too.